All right, next up on things you didn't know. David Letterman. Did you guys ever watch Mr. Letterman?
Almost every night.
You know he read my name on his show, right?
Frank Sharples?
Yeah, exactly. The Frank Sharples. And I missed it. I didn't get to see him say
I don't know
my
if
name.
I've actually heard this story.
I think I've told it to you. When he used to do the CBS mailbag. When he used to do CBS mailbag, you could go to their website when they had the crappy website and you could ask like a question. And I had done it a few times and it was just like outlandish questions that I never asked. So finally, it was like leading up to Thanksgiving. I think it was like 2003. It's like a week before Thanksgiving. And I was like, you know what? I'll ask an easy question. And I just asked, have you ever had a float in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? And Letterman's on. I'm sitting there watching it. They go to commercial. So I cut over to Leno to see, what he's doing.
That's your fault, man. That's on you, bro.
And when I came back, I thought I got there in time because he was reading a letter and he went through and read them and didn't say mine. I was like, oh, well, whatever. The next day I go to my mom's and my mom goes, so, Mr. Letterman, have you ever had a float in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade? And I remember sitting there going, yep. And then I went, wait a minute, how the hell did you know that? And she goes, one of my cousins up in New York was watching the show, recognized the name, and called me to tell me that he said. And then I was like, well, what was the skit? And she goes, well, she forgot because she was so excited she knew the person's name. She didn't know what the skit was, so I never found out what the hell the skit was.
Oh, man. All right, we're talking about David Letterman because The Late Show with David Letterman debuted August 30th, 1993, and from mid to late 90s, I watched Letterman probably religiously. It was always on. I never understood the appeal of Jay Leno, but then when you think about it, it's like, oh, because he was for the old people that don't want things to be too edgy.
That was one of the things when I would stay at my grandparents' in the city, they'd watch Leno and they hated Letterman because of the way Letterman was. And so we were always stuck watching Leno for the first hour
Letterman's
or so.
So much better. So much better. So he was born April 12th, 1947, and he began working as an announcer and weekend weatherman for WLWI, an ABC affiliate in Indianapolis, Indiana. He had guest appearances and even guest hosted The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to move my mouse around here. And in 1980, he even had his own daytime talk show host on NBC that was called The David Letterman Show. It was very short-lived.
Yeah,
it was like late morning.
Yeah.
But he did have the late night with David Letterman that ran on NBC, and that was from 1982 to 1993. And then obviously we're going to get to the whole Tonight Show thing, but the top 10 list, his famous top 10 list, actually debuted in 1985.
All right.
And we got to go in for
a lot of top 10s.
We got to go in on a taping of Letterman. I went to New York in 2009, and it was the Christmas episode. So
it was like towards the end.
Yeah. So if you watch the 2009 Christmas episode, I'm in the audience for that one. And it was interesting because you got to see him make a mistake because he teases a top 10 list, and there was no top 10 list for that episode.
Oh.
So they had to cut, and then they came back. Now, in 1992, Johnny Carson announced his retirement, and speculation was going to be that Letterman would replace him. But in January of 93, NBC announced that it would be Leno taking over The Tonight Show.
Yep.
Look at that lineup. You got Bill Cosby, Tim Allen, Jason Alexander, Ross Perot, and is that Wynton Marsalis?
Wynton Marsalis.
Yeah, that was his band leader.
That was his band leader?
I think for a bit there, wasn't it?
I think, at the very beginning of where it was,
the saxophone. Oh, wait,
yeah,
no,
he was like a jazz musician. Yeah.
One of them, yeah.
I never could get into Jay Leno. And by the way,
I would watch Letterman, and then after Letterman, switch over to Conan.
Yep. Yeah. That was all. Yeah. You go watch the Triumph the Insult Comic Dog and the Masturbating Bear.
Yep.
Or the Pimp Bot.
Or the Pimp Bot. Yeah. Man, that was a golden time for late night shows if you think about it. Like, that was really good.
From, like
Letterman,
94 to early 2000. Was good.
So March 17th, this is when things get crazy for David Letterman, by the way. March 17th, 2005, Kelly Frank, a house painter, who
Woody
worked on
Harrelson?
Letterman's Montana ranch, is charged with plotting to kidnap Letterman's son for ransom. In September, Frank pleads guilty. Not this Frank, but the Frank that's on the screen.
I want a handlebar mustache.
Not,
like
not
that.
the Frank that's down there, the Frank that's over there.
I want your kid, Letterman.
He pled
Give me a
guilty.
top 10.
He pled guilty to a lesser charge and is sentenced to 10 years. There you go, and 10 years in prison. In 2007, he escaped. And then
Never
he
heard
was,
of any. Wow.
and then
He's
he
a
was
wily criminal.
promptly recaptured, though, after that.
But he didn't slap his wife.
And he did not. What if he spit on it, though?
Hawk 2?
Haktua. And then October 1st, 2009, Letterman admits on air that he had sexual relationships with female staff members and that someone has been attempting to blackmail him over the affairs.
I remember that. That was all the rumors that were going on about it and everything, and then he just finally had to admit to it.
Yeah, that's the best way to deal with being blackmailed is just admit it.
And it's
I'm
interesting.
clean with whatever he did.
When you watch his apology, it's not like a tearful apology, but it's still it still feel like he's making jokes throughout the whole thing.
Yeah.
But it still came off as genuine to me.
Well, I remember people being upset about it because they felt he didn't take it seriously and that he kind of just joked his way through it and
Was he acting
was kinda
glib?
and deflecting. Do you remember the kid that used to walk in, the intern that used to just walk in randomly and start? He went on to be a decent movie star. I can't remember his name. The whatever, I'm gonna have to look this up. Whatever intern, the actor, he'd just walk in and go, "Hey, what's up, Dave? What's up, my man?" He'd like smoke a cigarette. He's like, "I've been perusing around the back, and the guys are talking about a kegger, and you're invited." You know what I'm saying, Dave-O?
How do I not remember that?
It was like from 2008 to 2009.
Oh,
somewhere
that's
in
way
there.
after I was watching, yeah.
Was it Kyle? I think it was Kyle. It was the guy's name, and it was just
Lyle,
this random.
Lyle the intern. Oh, and that's
There you go.
That's Jimmy. What's his face? Shit. Hold on.
Yeah, he went on to be
Jimmy
in the
Simpson.
West World.
Yeah,
TV.
he's one of the McPoyles.
Yeah, dude, you need to find that on YouTube and watch. It's like an hour and a half of him just walking in, like either threatening Dave or just like talking about how there's a kegger and there's gonna be.
I might have to look at because I love Jimmy Simpson. He is a phenomenal actor.
It's great, man. It's some of the funniest stuff.
So back to Mr. Letterman here. March 9th, 2010. Again, this is when things were getting really nuts for him. Robert Joe Halderman, a former CBS News producer accused of trying to blackmail Letterman, pleads guilty to attempted second-degree grand larceny and is sentenced to 6 months in jail, 5 years probation, and 1,000 hours of community service. In September, Halderman is released after serving 4 months of his 6-month prison sentence. In The Late Show with David Letterman taped its final episode on May 20th, 2015. And this is the one moment I definitely remember from that episode. Julia Louis-Dreyfus is the top 10 things I've always wanted to say to Dave. And it was, thanks for letting me be part of in another hugely disappointing series finale. And of course, you have Jerry Seinfeld right there. And then from
Jim Carrey growing his beard back there because he gave up at Hollywood by that point.
Yep, you got Chris Rock, Jim Carrey, Jerry Seinfeld, Steve Martin,
Already
Julia
looking 80.
Louis-Dreyfus. And then from finally from 2018 until about now, I think it's still going on. My next guest needs no introduction. You can find over on Netflix with David Letterman.
What? Who does Zach Galifianakis called him? What? The crystal meth Santa Claus in between two ferns.
So one of the interesting behind the scenes stuff too. I listened to a lot of Dan Patrick, and he talked about how a couple of times when he would be on the show, if you were one of his guests and you ran into him before the show, he wouldn't talk to you, and it came off as kind of weird. Not really rude, but it was different. But as it was explained, he didn't want to ruin anything before the show. He wanted to make sure that everything was new when they were filming, so he didn't want to actually engage with you before the cameras were on.
Yeah, and I've done that, with like a radio interview where you have them there in the studio with you and you're like, we're waiting to go on. You don't want to talk too much because you want to save this stuff for actually on the air. So that
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Well, and that's also
But
one
it's
of
awkward. It's awkward then.
it does get really awkward, but it's also one of the things too. Before we start going live on this live stream, is we have to be careful about not discussing the topics that we're going to bring up on the show because we don't want to. You want that genuine conversation to be live. You don't want to have to try to reenact anything, and then it comes off as awkward.
He's a method actor.